Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Former Action Guys podcast. As always, I'm your host, Justin Kramer. Before we get started, I'd like to announce my first paid sponsor with Southern New Hampshire University. SNHU is a paid sponsor of this video, but if you listen to the show, you know that I push education for everyone, so I'm happy to share their programs. Anything from a professional certificate that shows experience to a master's degree can help you advance in the military or your civilian career. You can go to snhu.edu/formeractionguys to get more information for free or click the link in the show description. SNHU is a nonprofit university that is accredited and wants to make education accessible to everyone by offering flexible online courses with more than 200 degree programs available. If you're in a competitive MOS, you can stand out for promotion by adding a degree to your military records. Active duty service members and their spouses get up to 30% off tuition with dedicated military support from day one to graduation. Why is this important? As you know, there's a cap on tuition assistance from the military, which is why SNHU's discount of 30% off can come in handy to maximize your benefits. When I was in, I maxed out my tuition assistance so that when I got out and I earned my bachelor's degree, I still had more than 12 months of GI Bill benefits to use for an advanced degree, or I can pass those benefits on to my son. Learn more about advancing your military civilian career with SNHU's military programs by going to snhu.edu/formeractionguys. Again, type in snhu.edu/formeractionguys to receive more information from this paid sponsor, or click the link in the show description. Now let's get back to the show.
So how it went down was so George Bush says the word and we push towards the border, right? So we're on the border, we're digging in for like approximately like 24 hours. All the ammunition to further the nightmare of being in the track, all the ammunition for the 50 cal and the Mark 19 was on the floor of the troop compartment. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't even like sit all the way down. Your legs were kind of up. We had the center bench. So there's a bench on either side and a center bench. The center bench was all dudes riding backwards facing the ramp. And then all of us were like to the side. Well, the corpsman was a Vietnamese kid, and it's just funny, but like not so funny. He was sitting with his back all the way against the engine, and later on during the ride, he's like, Sergeant, I have to move. I am burning alive, because his like back is against like the engine, you know.
God, that sounds miserable.
So we get up to the border, and once again, it still doesn't feel like this is actually going to happen, right? Like, I'm sure you've been in a ton of drills where you're just like, this is like somebody's going to call this bullshit off, right? They're not actually going to send us over the border, right? Well, that night, I should probably preface by saying, like, we had the vaguest of plans told to us as to what we were going to be doing, right? Like, we knew that there was this place called Safwan Hill right over the border that was going to get bombed into oblivion in the opening salvo, and then recon was going to go up there and shoot everybody. So I figured that it was like an LPOP for the Iraqi army. Mm-hmm. So we figured maybe that would go down and that would shut the whole thing off. But so the evening of the invasion, like every artillery piece I'd ever even heard of started firing. And so you're looking up with your NVGs and you just see wrap rounds. You know what a wrap round is. Like you just see wrap rounds just like streaking through the fucking night, man. And like just nonstop. Like it never stopped. Quick funny story is I realized that we had built field expedient Bangalores to blow through breaches on our way in if we had to. Mm-hmm. And we realized that we didn't have any priming systems built yet, so we needed detonators, right? Because it's another stupid story. But so I hop out of the track. They were in hold down position, so it was dug in. The track was in a ditch, so only the top was sticking out. I jumped in that ditch to crimp some detonators. And I was using a red flashlight down in the ditch. There are hundreds of artillery rounds flying overhead towards Kuwait. Old first sergeant comes over and gets to screaming at me because the company commander sees my red flashlight in the fucking hole. And like, I'm going to give away the entire position of 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. Yeah. And I'm like bro, what are you talking? Yeah, bro, what are you talking about? Did you look up? You know?
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so we go screaming, like the engine revs, the ramp goes up on the track, and we go pushing forward. We went through the breach and we didn't hit anything. I'm trying to think if it was the first night or the second night we actually got a frago to actually do something. So the first initial part of the breach in Iraq, we didn't hit anything. We just pushed straight through and like just ended up in Iraq the next day. So you're like, oh shit, I guess we're here. One of the first things we did is we cleared out an old Iraqi artillery position that had been like bombed to shit. Who knows? You know, there's just a bunch of artillery rounds, artillery tubes sticking up all over the place. Mm-hmm. Our track actually hit a anti-personnel mine, right? So it sounds like a sledgehammer, like of huge proportions, slams into the fucking track, right? And it trickles down somewhere that, hey, anti-personnel mine, whatever, and we just keep on pushing, thinking somebody was going to radio that thing in. Well, 37's log train then pulled into that next and didn't get the word. And so I think the first two casualties of the war were our career planner in 37, and he was on like Oprah afterwards, and our I forgot the other guy, like the motor T chief or something, like lost a foot to a fucking anti-personnel mine.
Fuck, man.
So we're still not hearing much. We're still pushing north. And the first actual frago, sometime in the middle of the night, like the lieutenant that's riding the track, like wakes up and yells gas down into the troop compartment because he, I don't know, thought he saw a gas round somewhere in a delirious. So we had a momentary panic where we're all trying to put every piece of our mop gear on inside the Amtrak in the dark. And finally we're just like, we just said, fuck it. So this whole period of time kind of blurs together a little bit. But so the next thing that happens that was of any import in that first 36 hours was we got a frago to assault a building that had been given tanks trouble, I guess, for the entire day, right? It's now the evening of the evening in, I believe. My memory's probably shot on this, but so me and the squad leader in the back of so being an assaultman, the assault section leader, I was able to attach myself to whoever I wanted, right? I would attach out my guys, and then I would look to see whatever infantry squad looked to be the most competent, and then I would attach myself to them. I would just be like, hey, I had a gunner and an A gunner, but I was like, hey, you guys do your thing. I'm just going to stay over here and support you, I'm not, do your gunner thing. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what kind of build, like what exactly are we going to do if the tanks haven't been able to dig these people out? So this is kind of how this goes down. So me and the squad leader in the back are like screaming at each other, trying to hash out this plan, right? So I'm like, okay, hey, check it out, man. As soon as the ramp drops, you guys get security set. I'll locate a breach point and blow it open with the rocket launcher. He's like, okay, cool. So, you can't tell anything back there. You're like in a steel box of emotion. So, the engines are revving, the thing's moving up and down. The ramp drops and it's dark night outside. The driver of the Amtrak used to talk a gang of shit before we actually went over. And, about being like a tough guy kind of thing. But as soon as that ramp came down, he was screaming his head off, like, get out so I can close the ramp. It was like, okay, guy. So we all go rushing out. We get online, drop down on this berm, and I see this building ahead of us. And I told my small gunner ahead of time, like, hey, look, I'm gonna strobe my laser. I had a PEC 2, I had a laser on my M16. So I'm gonna strobe my laser on what I want you to hit. Or I'm gonna put my laser on what I want you to hit, right? He's like, okay, yeah, cool, Roger. So we all go screaming out, slam down. I see a breach point on this building. It's just like a one-story, like, did you go to Iraq?
I went to Iraq, but I was a fob the whole time. Yeah.
So like your standard Iraqi one-story, like brick building kind of thing.
Okay.
I see a front door. I put my laser on it. I looked down at my small gunner, whose name was Weldon. I'm like, Weldon, hit the target or hit the laser. And he looks back at me and he's like, which one? So I look back to the building and realize that now everybody's PEC 2s are all over the building. It looks like fucking lasers everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I start strobing mine, and I'm like, hit the strobing one on the door, right? So Weldon puts the first rocket like dead center into the door, and the thing like blows up inside the building. When the smoke clears, I look up and the door's still on its hinges because it went straight through the door, basically. I'm like, so I start screaming at him to fire again. And this is my first experience with like the whole slowing down of time and combat and shit. Like, to me, it feels like this kid has taken forever with his A gunner to reload the rocket. So I turned to him to yell, because I think I told him to hit it again. Verbiage fucking disappears. Like, reload, hit it again. So by the time I looked down to him to scream at him to fire again, his A gunner was Johnny on the spot. I already had the new rocket in, and Weldon was hammering it again. So I was staring directly at the back of the SMAW when this fucking thing went off. So it felt like the hand of God just basically bitch slapped me to the side of the head.
Lesson learned.
From the back blast of the SMAW. So by the time I look back to the building, the door is like flipping end over end towards us now. So like, okay, cool. So the squad leader, Adam, he runs his guys over the berm into the building. And most of my stories of the first part of Iraq is a dry hole. It's like a lot of excitement, and then nothing happens. It's a completely empty fucking building.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
that
it
was my
happens,
first.
man. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
It happens, but when you were putting those rounds into the building, you don't know that. You
Right.
know? And this is your first like real engagement, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure the adrenaline was like boom, 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 boom. Like I'm sure you were
Dude.
everything was just firing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also as soon as the first rocket went down range, we were the first gun team to fire. So as soon as the first rocket went down range, everybody else opened up. The 240s, the M16s, it was like they just fired like the FPF, the final protective fires, real quick. They're like, so maybe it was good for everybody to get the nerves out of their system, like
Yeah, for sure.
on an easy one, like yeah.
So, were you glad that you finally got to like because you did security forces and all that other stuff and you
Yeah.
weren't even expecting to go to Iraq. Were you glad to be there in that moment and like doing your job as an assaultman,
Yeah, because it was, we, in my mind, I was going into this place to liberate these people from this dictator, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and in every combat dude's mind, you have in the back of your head, like, am I going to be able to do this? Because you've heard all the stories, and you're like, man, okay, so it's game time. Like, am I going to let my guys down? Am I going to be able to perform in combat?
For
Like,
sure.
what's going to happen? Because I've seen grown ass Marines freeze in combat later on in life. It's so there's always that fear in the back of your mind that you're not going to perform in front of your guys, right?
Yeah, you don't want
Which
to
is
let everybody down. You don't want to let your dudes down.
no, you don't want to get them hurt. You don't want to let them down. So, uh, initially I was just initially glad that I performed up to what I expected of myself. I didn't let myself down as far as like leading the dudes into combat that first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I initially believed in what we were doing. So it was yeah, let's push forward and fucking liberate this country once we're actually in there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For those
Yeah.
that have never been in an Amtrak or understand kind of how that assault would have gone, there's a documentary. I don't know where it's at now. It used to be on Netflix, but I'm not sure if it's there anymore. It's called Severe Clear. I've recommended it on the podcast a
All
few
right.
times. There's an artillery officer. The first part of it's kind of goofy. He's like, this is like 2002, and it looks like he has like a home video camera, and he's like getting ready for the muse. So he's like packing his bags and like, oh, here, I'm going to deploy my gas mask, haha, But once you get into the actual like they're in Iraq and shit, it's a pretty fucking crazy like view of what these guys were doing. And I mean, he's doing call for fire from the track. You're watching the guns
Yeah.
engage people from the track, and it's like for someone that was never, I never rode in tracks, it's kind of oh, okay, I can kind of see how difficult that would be for different positions. Like you guys, as soon as something happens, door fucking opens, you guys run out. For an artillery person, you're kind of stuck on that track, if that's where you're, because that's where all the fire support's planning and approving, and all that shit is happening in the back of one of those. So.
Yep.
For those that are listening, that's something to check out. I need to find, if anyone out there, because I know a lot of artillery guys listen to this podcast, if anybody out there knows the guy that made that documentary, have him hit me up. I'd love to have him on because I've literally talked about his documentary multiple times on the podcast. So,
Oh yeah.
Anyways, though, do you want to talk more about like the rest of that deployment? I know it's kind of hit and miss. There was a lot of,
Yes.
From what I've talked to other people from 3-7 before. Some of them downplay what they did, so I don't know how much you want to talk about.
Well, so for Kilo Company, we got an easy lane, I guess. Lima Company had their own lane. India Company had their own lane. And as far as Kilo goes, so we hit the Azubayr oil fields. Was our main objective as soon as we crossed the border, was to secure the Azubayr oil fields, and we were going to get relieved by the British. And as soon as we got relieved by the British, we were just going to push north to Baghdad. So we pushed north, and like you saw crazy shit for the first time in your life. I saw a C-130 land on basically the freeway. It looked like they had either cut or blown down the telephone poles. And no shit, like a C-130 just landed on the freeway, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We pulled over somewhere right across the border into just like this massive herringbone, which is just
Pulling
Amtrak.
off the road.
Yeah. And that was like one of the first times I saw the special operations guys, because they come up in like these Humvees that have machine guns sticking out of like every angle, like the
Yeah,
doors are
yeah.
gone.
The
And
GMVs or whatever.
yeah, I didn't even know what they were called at the time. And they had a couple dudes in Land Rovers with them, and they were like in jeans, like button-up shirts and like chest rigs and M4s. And I'm like, and I'm wearing a fucking mop suit. These dudes are not wearing mop suits, by
Yeah,
the way.
they look like they're on summer vacation having a good time out here.
Yeah, and I'm like, what am I doing wearing a fucking, like, what do they know that I don't, right? So we went north. We stopped at some concrete factory and to wait for our log train to show up, because we were so far ahead of our log train. We were basically like out of water, gas, food, everything. So we posted up there for a little while. We crossed through a town called Numania, which was basically on the edge of the Tigris River. There was a little bit of friction there, but nothing big. We had a pretty exciting night for one evening. Our platoon, second platoon, got attached with our tracks to a tank platoon and the CAT, which is the Combined Anti-Armor Team, which is the weapons company guys with the 50 cals, Mark 19s, tow missiles loaded up into Humvees.
Yeah.
So we basically made like a very small task force for an evening, and we were tasked with destroying an Iraqi military base, one of Saddam's palaces, and a bath party house, like in the span of like, you know, an evening and a day.